In this video, we'll go over the Owlery, the third installment of Hogwarts, as part of Department 56's Harry Potter Village series. I'll show you how to unwrap and wrap the piece, as well as talk about its durability, collectibility, storability, and displayability, as well as how it comes across in village form from the movie. Before we begin, I want to mention that I'm not affiliated with Department 56, Warner Brothers, or Wizarding World. I'm just expressing my own personal opinions as a Harry Potter fan and villager. If you haven't seen the review of the Great Hall, I recommend watching it, as many of the points in that video relate to this piece. Well, first, let's dive into opening this box. Opening the Owlery box will be slightly different than opening the Great Hall or the Astronomy Tower boxes. First, you'll remove this sleeve by taking the corners and pulling up. This box has what I call a tab. It's harder to open but easier to close. Continue cutting the tape between the two styrofoam covers, and when you get to the tab, cut right up to the corner and cut across the end of the tab. Press your cutter back into the other corner and continue cutting the side. Then cut corner to corner on both sides. Feeling for the cut marks and listening to the sound of your knife cutting across the tape will help you not run your blade into the styrofoam. Now I pull out any papers to see if there are any special instructions. Not here. So I'll pull out the piece, being mindful of this permanent light cord. Then I'll check for accessories, and none here. Next up is finding the electrical plug and the battery pack. We'll talk more about this later, but first, let's take a closer look at the Owlery. So the Owlery was mentioned on and off again in the book series. It got its big debut in the fourth movie, Goblet of Fire. So this is a hub of activities as the owls come and go. This is their home. It's pretty recognizable because it sits atop a hill and can be seen center of Hogwarts. The main difference between the Owlery and the Great Hall or the Astronomy Tower buildings is that there are no windows, as those pieces have. And that's by design. The owls have to fly in and out. The exact measurements of the piece are 4.53 inches long by 4.53 inches wide by 10.71 inches high. Retail price, $110. I doubt this piece as a standalone would be that collectible. It just doesn't have the same majesty as the Great Hall and the Astronomy Tower buildings do on their own. The Owlery's value is really as an addition to the other buildings, the set. Combined with the set, it adds a nice authentic touch. As with previous Harry Potter pieces, with this permanent light fixture, store away from dramatic temperatures and keep out of direct sunlight. The box's measurements are 6¼ by 7¼ by a little over 12½. The piece is made of resin, so be really mindful of these easily breakable areas, the owl wings and the tops, the points of these roofs. The hill was not only purposeful in look and feel, it was also to add weight to the bottom, as thin, tall towers with turrets can be really top-heavy. This added weight and mass will help stabilize the Owlery, but still, I recommend testing your structure to make sure it's as safe and stable as possible. Although I recommend new villagers grab hold of pieces at the bottom, there's no reason to do that here. Grab hold of the tower with one hand between the turret and the hill. It's very lightweight, and that is a good midpoint of the weight. Also, as with any piece with this permanent light cord, be mindful of it as it can get in the way. I wrap it around a finger or place it in between two fingers. The very first thing I noticed when I opened up the Owlery was this owl. It's supposed to signify that this is the place of the owls, but it's so disproportionate. True, the Owlery is set behind the castle proper, and I guess they wanted you to see the owl from a distance, but it's so huge next to this tower. And is this Hedwig? I don't know. If I could put Hedwig anywhere in the village, it would not be attached to the Owlery. If it's not Hedwig, I wish it weren't as white to visually compete with Hedwig. Well, it's attached. It's not coming off easy. Don't get me wrong, it's a really good replica of the Owlery, but I had hoped it would be more owly. Like have owls in the windows, have them attached by wire, have them animated or moving, or at the very least, have a little accessory pack of mini owls and let the villager decide how to display them. As small as this piece is in size and stature, especially when compared to the other buildings, I expected it to do or say more. Alright, now let's talk about this battery pack. I should just create a separate video on these things. First, you'll have to supply the batteries, and you'll have to manually turn this thing on and off. To avoid all of that, I purchased this adapter and plug from my local Radio Shack. And now I can set all 3 buildings on a timer and not have to bother with batteries and switches and other inherent annoyances. I know this building is to be displayed at a distance, but I have to mention that if you look inside the window, you'll see white. It's hard to see in film. I'm not sure if this is intentional to help reflect the light or something. I'm also not sure if it is supposed to signify owl droppings. I'm not sure if it was an oversight. Whatever the reason, it's visible. Lastly, we have to go back to color and compare the piece to the Great Hall and Astronomy Tower buildings. You can see here that the Owlery is more rusty brown than the two, and the plants down here are much darker than the platforms on the other 2 buildings. Out of the 3, I kind of prefer the orange of the Astronomy Tower, green of the Great Hall, and the blue of the Owlery's roof. I just wish the colors were more consistent throughout. But thankfully, the Owlery is meant to be set between the 2 and can be positioned higher or further back, which will help with blending of all of the colors. You'll also notice weathering on the brick with this piece, and not so much on the roof as the last pieces. Interesting reversal. And speaking of the roof, this is actually my favorite detail. I love what the designers did with the roof tiles. Instead of a repeat of the brick formation, we have a nice circular pattern, and the color is vibrant. That's a really nice touch. It's a good roof. We touched on this briefly, but if you are going for accuracy, the position of the Owlery is supposed to be in between the Great Hall on the left and the Astronomy Tower piece on the right. You can set this on top of a landform or platform if you want to have more visual prominence, as it can get easily lost between the 2. In fact, I recommend raising it up if you are setting any trees out with it, as the Owlery may get doubly overshadowed by them as well. If you want it to be not so noticeable, you can set it further back on your structure. So in sum, I am truly thankful Department 56 made the Owlery, as it is an important place on the grounds of Hogwarts. I couldn't wait to get this piece, honestly. However, I just can't give it the full 5 owls with this battery pack, the window strategy unfinished or bird poop realism, and this owl turned condor size. 3 owls.